You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
So excited to get started with today's show because what I want to do is actually show you a way to take your training right now to the next level. And if you're a personal trainer or you're a health coach and you want to help a client really take them to that next level, show them how advanced, you can get with this, meaning that how you can truly optimize where you're at for your own body. This is it. And it's super simple to do once you know how to do it. So here's how it works. And I'm calling it the sweet science of heart rate training made easy. Heart is not an easy word to say when you have a Boston accent, although I think I've done an okay job at removing that accent over the years. But heart might slip out a couple of times as well as I'm doing the show. So here's what we want to do is we need to calculate. We need to know what our max heart rate is. Okay. So once we know what that is, then we're going to be able to use that for our training to really get the most out of our body. Now, here's the interesting thing is that we might be able to actually improve this even as we're getting older, but we might be able to improve our max heart rate. And the reason is we're becoming more fit. And that's such an amazing thing to look at your biology versus your chronology, right? So it's like, okay, I'm getting older, but my insides, they're getting younger. That's kind of what this is all about. So what I want to do today is actually tell you exactly what this is because it's not going to make sense until we just dive right into it. But when you're training, your heart rate obviously increases. But did you ever stop to think like how high it should be? What the benefits are of increasing your heart rate or maybe keeping it a little lower for a longer period of time? That's what we want to go over. So what we're doing is when we're looking at interval training and we're really pushing ourselves hard, we need to look at what that max heart rate is and if we're really pushing ourselves that hard. Because sometimes we might not be. Like we might think we're pushing hard, but our heart rate says otherwise. Okay, now the nice thing is this. There's so many gadgets out there to take your heart rate, right? We've got Apple Watches now. We've got literally these little tiny, you can wear them as a ring. Like they're called the Uva ring, I believe. And another one is fitness calculator, one by Biometrics. Another one is just wearing a heart rate strap, right? I used to wear one of the Polar heart rate straps. And again, so many companies make them. Why don't I do this? I'm just going to link up to it today in the show notes. So I'm just going to put link heart rate monitor, and I'll give you a bunch of different versions to buy because, of course, you know how to buy an Apple Watch on your own. But there's so many. There's the Fitbit, there's Withings, but then there's also more advanced ones as well, like the Polar. So what we're looking to do is get our heart rate, all right? Here's how we calculate it. Here's how we calculate your max heart rate. So like, what's your max? What's the maximum amount of beats per minute that your heart can go? Well, we have a general calculator that's actually pretty good. It really is. It's 220 minus your age. So 220 minus your age. Okay, so in our example today, we're going to use someone that's 35 years old. Now, if I subtract 35 by 220, what do I get? I get 185. Let me give you another example just before we move on with this one. Let's say you're 65 years old. 220 minus 65 is 155 beats per minute. Let's say you're 20 years old. 220 minus 20 equals 200. So you can see each one of these people, based on their age, has a different max heart rate. And that's typically how it works. Now, I know that if you've been training for a while or you've got great genetics, you can actually be 10 to 20 beats higher or lower. So it's important to take into account, but assume that 220 minus your age is going to be a good place to start if you're reasonably fit. If you've never exercised, you haven't exercised in a decade, your max heart rate, instead of being 185 for this 35-year-old, it might be 165, okay? Just keep that in mind, but we need a starting place. And for most people, it's going to be about 220 minus your age unless you're severely deconditioned. Okay, so now that we know this, what does that mean? Well, we can start to look at other things, meaning like, what's our heart rate reserve? Again, listen to this show again to really get this, because this is actually going to be able to take your exercise to the next level. All right. You need to just calculate just at rest. So again, wear a heart rate monitor, a Fitbit, a Withings, an Apple Watch, a Polar heart rate monitor strap around the chest, which I still think is the most reliable. Or even wear an oximeter on your finger, right? $20 oximeter tells you how much blood oxygen's in the body, as well as your heart rate. So I'll link that up today in the show notes as well. All right. You want your resting heart rate to be in the 50s or the 60s. I mean, that's just the best place to keep it. Let's say you have higher resting heart rate. What does that mean? It means there's some type of stressor on your body. We don't know exactly what. It's not telling us that, but there's some type of stressor. There's some type of inflammation, constriction of the arteries, increased norepinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol, something stressing the body, increased thyroid hormone. So what we want to do is we want to figure that out, of course. But you have to keep in mind that if you have a higher resting heart rate, it's going to affect you when you exercise. Because remember, let's say your resting heart rate's in the 80s, like a few people that I've seen in my practice, maybe even higher. I saw one woman in my practice just this past week, resting heart rate over 100. We know that there's a massive stressor on her body. So our job now is to rebalance the body, figure out what all the stresses are, and remove those. So her resting heart rate literally goes down in half, like into the 50s or 60s. Okay, so that matters though, because remember, if your resting heart rate's in the 80s, it's already like going for a brisk walk. Like your body, even when it's sitting, is at a brisk walk, which means when you actually start to run, you're going to be, even if it's a light jog, you're going to be way up there heart rate wise. So you have to take that in consideration, which is another reason why heart rate training really does make a huge difference, and it's great to look at. All right, so that's the caveat. Now, to find out your heart rate reserve, this is what you do. You take your max heart rate, which we just calculated, right? 220 minus your age. In our case, we're going to be using a 35-year-old. 220 minus 35 is 185 beats per minute. That's the max. Okay, so now we take your 185, your max, and we subtract it from your resting heart rate. Let's just say it's 65 beats per minute. 185 minus 65 is 120 beats per minute. Now, this is why this matters. Your regular heart rate just at rest, just hanging out seated, is 65. When exercising, the max that you can be is 185. That means you have 120 extra beats per minute that you can use for exercise. When you learn that, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That actually means I can exercise pretty hard because I can raise my heart rate almost double what my resting heart rate is. But as you age, if you're 85 years old, your max heart rate goes down to about 135, okay? So now you don't get that same doubling, right? Because 135 minus 65 is about 70 beats or so per minute. Now you can't double. You're about half the 120 beats. So it does matter. So like, again, this stuff is like, it's technical, but really important. And it's not that hard to figure out. Again, 220 minus your age is your max. In our case, 185 beats per minute for a 35-year-old. Now, with your heart rate reserve, it's 185 minus your resting heart rate, which let's just say it's 65. That's 120 beats per minute. So now we know how much reserve we have, how much extra we can push during our training. So now let's give you some real-world examples that you could use if you're a personal trainer, health coach listening to this, or if you're an everyday person wanting to get the max out of your workouts. Okay, so let's talk about anaerobic interval training first. Anaerobic means that you're pushing your heart rate closer to the 80 to 90 to 100% of max, okay? Definitely above 80, 85%. That means by the end of your interval, whether it's 30 seconds or up to like 3 minutes, you are going to be pushing yourself in that anaerobic threshold, okay? Typically, all-out anaerobism lasts for anywhere up to 90 seconds max. The human body seems to be able to not really function after going all out for a sprint for 90 seconds. So again, I've talked about that before. One of the most challenging events in track is the half mile, because for the best people in the world, it's like 90 seconds. And for your average, really good high school person, it'd be like a little over 2 minutes. So it's an extremely difficult event, literally going all out. People at the end of that are like, literally feel like they're dying. So that is an all out, but again, you can use this for anything. Again, it could be used for Tabata. It could be used for 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, 1 minute on, 2 minutes off, however you want to do it. This is going to allow you to figure that out. And I'm going to customize it. That's what heart rate training does. It allows you to customize your intervals as well. So here's what we want to do. Well, what does anaerobism mean? So anaerobism is essentially looking at a non-oxygen-based environment in terms of mitochondrial and energy-based output, ATP output, okay? So that's all we're looking at, is we're looking at the body, really looking at a fermentation, lactic acid, glucose-based metabolism rather than oxygen-based, okay? So what we're looking at now is at the end of that interval being around your 100% max, or at least like 90% max. So what does that mean? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. For that 35-year-old, at 85%, they're going to be at 150, 160 beats per minute, okay? All the way up to 185 beats, which is their max. So what are they going to try to do? Well, at the end of their interval, if they push themselves hard enough, they're going to stay somewhere between 160, 165, and 185 beats. That's how they know they really pushed that anaerobic threshold. So now this allows you to customize it. How does it allow you to customize it? If you're going all out for a sprint and you hit 180 beats per minute, well, and that was 20 seconds, 25 seconds, you know that that's your max. You don't need to do 40 seconds. At 25 seconds of all out sprinting, you already hit your max of 100%, basically 185 beats. And again, you don't have to ramp it all the way up there. I'd say it's probably safer to be around 90%, 95%, which would be closer again than to the 175 marker or so, okay? So just keep that in mind. That's what I recommend. Shoot for that 90%. I think that's great to do. All right, now how do you customize recovery on that? Well, typically people would say, okay, you're going to do a 30-second sprint, go all out, and then you're going to take a minute off. Like that's just an easy 1-to-2 work to rest ratio. But for true heart rate training, what you're going to do is actually get all the way up to that 175 beats for this 35-year-old, but then you're going to get down to 50 to 60% of your max heart rate. So what does that mean? Well, for the 35-year-old, 220 minus your age, again, we get that, right? It's 185, but then we need to take 50% of that. What do we get? About 92.5, or we'll just say 93. So what we want you to do is get somewhere, I don't think we need to bring it all the way down to 50%, but we want to get to right around 100, 105 beats per minute before you start that next interval. This is true customization. I learned this way back in the day, somewhere around the year 2000. And it's been a great adjunct for when I work with athletes, elite athletes, or anyone that's been training for a while and they want to take their exercise to the next level. And I also use it for people who are deconditioned and looking to bring up their exercise to a more customized format. Now, I'm going to make this really easy for you. I'm going to put a color-coded chart right on Instagram today. So just go to Instagram and go to @StephenCabral, just my name. You'll see today's post. Let me know how you enjoyed today's post. And I'm going to put this chart right at StephenCabral.com/769. 769 is today's show. I'll put the calculator there, 220 minus your age. And then I'll put the heart rate reserve there. And then I'll also put this nice color-coded chart, okay? Now, how do you recover? A recap for interval training before I get on to aerobic. So anaerobic training, you're going to push it to 80 to 90+% of your max, all right? So for that 35-year-old, they're going to get somewhere around 175 beats per minute. And then whatever that takes, 30 seconds a minute, they're then going to rest as long as it takes to get down to about 105 beats or so per minute. That is going to allow them to fully recover between intervals and then get right back at it. Now, there are times where you might not want to fully recover. I get that. Tabata training is one of those. But if you want to do the scientific based, you'll get right into it that way. And also, now what's another nice way to know how many intervals you should do? Well, for a lot of people, you'll just do 8 to 10 intervals or 5 to 10 intervals. That's great. But for some people who are at the risk of overtraining, what you actually want to do is push your body or just, do a good workout. Maybe you're doing 4 intervals or 5 intervals. But then you start to find yourself actually not recovering within 3 minutes, not getting down to 60% of your max. And if you're not getting down to that 110, 105 as that 35-year-old, well, your body's had enough. You really have. It's showing you that J curve. Remember, the J curve is you get a lot of benefit from exercise until you push it too much, until you overwhelm your body. And if you're not recovering really within 3 minutes, 5 minutes maximum, but really 3 minutes, and you're not coming down to that 50, 60%, your body's had enough for the day. It honestly has. Anything more, now you're pushing cortisol too much. You're pushing adrenaline too much. You're probably starting to tap into muscle tissue, and that's not a good thing. So do keep that in mind. This is a great way to gauge how strong your workouts should be. And it can be day to day. It can be individual. That's why this data really matters. In the future, all of these smart gadgets, all this smart wear, and even alerts, they're going to just come custom. They really are. But for right now, you have the power, you have the knowledge, you're able to do this for yourself. So now let's chat about aerobic-based training. Remember, I did a show on this, why aerobics is making a comeback. If you didn't check that out, that show, that's episode 741. I'm going to link that up in today's show notes as well. So episode 741, I'm going to link up what? I'm going to link up the oximeter today, the heart rate trainers, all of those things. And this is going to allow you, again, to customize all of this for yourself. But aerobics, okay? There's a reason why you might want to oxygenate those tissues. Remember, aerobism means with oxygen. Anaerobic means without oxygen. You have 2 different training systems in the body and then variations of those. I'm not going to go into why you'd want to work in the anaerobic-based or the aerobic-based cardio zone. But check out episode 741 because it teaches you why, all right? Why I believe it's making a comeback. And then I would say not so much people won't really talk about it this year, but I think next year, the year after, is going to now start to break through. So be ahead of the curve. That's what I'm saying. All right, here's the deal with aerobic-based training. You want to stay away from anaerobism. That's pretty straightforward, right? So what does that mean? Well, you really want to stay between 50 and 75% of your max heart rate. All right. So for that 35-year-old, pretty simple. I'm going to give you the chart. It says on this chart, you want to stay between somewhere around, let's say 93 is a little low. Let's say between a 100 and 138. All right. Easy math, 100 and 135. That's going to keep you in the aerobic zone. That means that your body is still using oxygen as a preferred fuel source. And because it's using oxygen as a preferred fuel source, you're actually able to oxidize body fat to a greater degree. What does that mean? You're actually able to tap into body fat because your body's not working too hard yet and able to burn body fat. So now, again, when you do anaerobic training, you're still burning body fat. Don't get me wrong. And you have the potential to burn more body fat after the workout. So they're both great. But during, let's just say you're doing some light fasted cardio in the morning. Yeah, you'll work at somewhere around 100 to 130 beats per minute if you're a 35-year-old, right? And that allows you to actually, yes, oxidize body fat. Now, a lot of people debate this, but it's still true. And it's one of the reasons why bodybuilders to this day and a lot of body transformation people and figure competitors do just some brisk walking, a light jog, light bike, first thing in the morning to really take advantage of the lower blood sugar and tapping into body fat stores. It does work. I mean, I've trained figure competitors and body transformation athletes for years. And so easy, it works. And again, we don't really need to debate it because it can just be an adjunct. It doesn't have to be not replacing intervals. You can still do interval training as well. I like both because interval training actually builds muscle too, which is great for the body because you're pushing your body just like you would in a resistance-based training, only this time the resistance is actually your muscle tissue, your fibers, okay? So amazing. So that's pretty easy, right? So you just essentially hop on a bike, go for a light jog if your body's in good biomechanical alignment, do rowing, do any of those things, and you want to stay between the 100 and 135 for that 35-year-old, somewhere between 50, I would say right around 60%, 75%, and you want to stay in that for 30 plus minutes, and that will allow you to just oxygenate the tissues, okay? And it will allow you to tap into body fat to a greater degree. Again, I don't want to have the debate today on whether you can burn more fat with interval training because I'm not saying you can't, but there's also a reason why you can work both the anaerobic and aerobic zone. It doesn't have to be all for one, just like it doesn't have to be all keto or not, or all paleo or not, or all primal or not, or all vegan or not. Like you can have variations of that, except I understand with some of those that's your philosophy and it's your dogma, and that's fine. With me, I've just always made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to let even my personal beliefs of what I choose to do in my life overshadow or overpower the knowledge that I want to bring to everyone, right? Because I have my own personal biases, but it doesn't mean I can't bring both sides of the argument to the table. That's what I try to do. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Just a quick recap, 220 minus your age gives you your max heart rate. To find out your heart rate reserve, you do your max heart rate that you calculated, in this case, 185 beats for a 35-year-old, minus your resting heart rate, which in this case was 65. That gives you 120 beats to play with for exercise, okay? For anaerobic training, what you're going to do is take somewhere around 80 to 90+% of your max, and you're going to work your interval up until that point. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it takes. You're going to push hard, and you're going to stay between that 80 to 100%, and you're going to look for your max, okay? Then your recovery between that interval is going to be somewhere between 50 to 60% of your max heart rate, which in this case was 185. Again, you're going to calculate that. That's going to be somewhere around 100 beats for recovery. Next up, we have aerobic training. And for that, pretty simple. For the entire time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes plus, you're going to stay between 50 and 75% of your max heart rate. In this case, the max heart rate for a 35-year-old was 185, and 50 to 75% was somewhere between 100 to 135. I will put the chart so that you can print it out. You can take a snapshot of it on your phone. You can keep it on your phone. You can use it for your own heart rate training. You can buy a Fitbit. You can buy a Withings. You can buy an Apple Watch. You can buy the Polar heart rate monitor, which is my favorite. Any of those monitors are great. It doesn't have to be Polar. It can be TomTom and it can be Garmin. I love Garmin. That's another great company. They're all great. Since no one's sent me any gear to actually review on the show, then I'm not going to give it out any favorites. But those are my favorite picks. Of course, I'm always going to give you the unbiased. Hopefully that helped today. If this can help you, then great, because I know that it can. But if you want to implement it today, great. Tomorrow, great. Maybe not for a couple months, but go back to the show, bookmark it, listen to it. I think you're going to be able to use this to really take your training to the next level. And as always, if this show is helpful, feel free to pass it on to anyone else you believe it may serve. Thank you very much for tuning into this Training Thursday. Check out tomorrow's Friday review. It's going to be great. Thanks. Take care. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stevencabral.com/courses.